But we're going to do Bill Hurley first so he can go home. We're actually
already heard stuff.
All right, so we are actually going to kick off the meeting. This is the February 18th meeting of the Flood Prevention, Climate Resilience, and Erosion Control Board. We are kicking off the meeting. It is 7 o'clock. This is Becky Bunnell, Chair, and let us go around, and if you could say your name and what your role is, whether you're a board member or a member of public or staff. So, Chuck, do you want to go?
Charles Abercrombie, member.
John Dilley, Vice Chair.
Greg Podolsky, member.
Bill Hurley, engineer.
Prue O'Brien, recording secretary.
John Fallon, member.
Keith Bradley, member.
Ian
Bass, citizen.
And if anyone on the phone is there, could you please state your names for the record, please?
This is Dick Mahusky, resident.
This is James Posey, resident at the time.
At the time, yes. And just for the record, James will be going to the Board of Selectmen meeting tomorrow and will be, assuming he is approved, which I would assume he will be filling our last vacant full member spot. So welcome, James, even though it's a little early, we'll welcome you.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Apologies for not making it in there today. A new dad of a 4-month-old who just came down with a fever for the first time, so a little anxious to leave home at this time. But good to be here. Thank you for the welcoming.
So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and if it's okay with the group, I'd like to switch the order of the agenda items to do the update and discussion of status of active projects, which is item 4 on our agenda. Do that first so that Bill can share that, and then he can go home.
Maybe.
He's welcome to stay, but
Thanks. Again, I've taken this update from a couple of years ago, and I thought it was time to update it again. So we'll start off with Riverside Drive and Turney Creek to Jennings Beach. That area, we had GVA take a look at that, and
Sorry, what's GVA?
GVA is a consultant.
Got it.
They were doing a benefit cost analysis, and that if we get analysis that's maybe 1.5 or 2, where the benefits outweigh the costs, then it might be eligible for FEMA. Unfortunately, in this location, it wasn't the case. And so we haven't really done anything going forward with that, with the exception of just, as I mentioned here, the project of the Turney, we call it the Turney Creek Bridge and Tie Gate project. That's in construction, it's going on right now. And that was a project where we replaced the bridge with culverts and tie gates, and includes construction and administration and inspection. So that was that one. The next one on the list here was South Benton Pump Station and Storm System Improvements. That one climbed up to, like, a couple of years ago during COVID. It was almost a $38 or $40 million project. At the time, a lot of town officials were questioning the pump station would then get rid of the water that has come over and then pump it out. People would still get flooded. It would be a lot quicker, but is it worth spending $40 million to do that? The only thing is if we were to still do a pump station, one of the problems that we're having right now is our WPA pipes that were built in the 1930s. I'm just going to arbitrarily say set at elevation 0, because that's what it was. Well, as you know, with rising sea levels or whatever, now that 0 is like a -1, and during a high tide or a higher tide, it could even be -2. So the water has really nowhere to go unless there's significant pressure flow, which again, beach area is relatively flat, or you have to wait for the tide to come down. And so that project's kind of been on hold right now. We haven't taken it off the list, but we're not really moving forward with it either.
Just a quick question. On the drainage, would it make sense to do any of the drainage in light of sea level rise and maybe not do the pump station part of it?
Well, again, the whole point with with making it, what's called a lower well point, is if you now made all the pipes go down to, say, -10.
Then you have to bump them.
Then you
You
pump
gotta
it
pump
out,
them.
so now everything would have gravity flow rather than the flat
And would that
flow.
stop the sunny day flooding?
It would reduce it. I'm not sure if it would, I don't know if it would eliminate it or not.
Okay.
We're not going to,
Yeah,
period.
yeah, because when water comes over it, especially on, say, Fairfield Beach Road, don't forget, this pump station was at South Benson area.
Oh, so it wouldn't touch the catch basin?
No, it
On
wouldn't.
overrun, okay.
Right. So, the beach nourishment and engineering beaches, that one, we started, a couple of years ago, we did have our survey crew out, marked out the beaches, then we found out you have to do it every year. It's not the most easiest thing, because they want elevations well into the water, which is kind of hard for our guys, to do that, without a vessel. And so, a combination of that and going all along the beach, they have to be approved beach, engineered beaches area. 4 of the 5 at least had, I'm gonna call it DEP concurrence. I don't know if they actually approve it, but they didn't object. The one they did object,
Penfield.
is Penfield, and that's a whole other chapter that I can't go into, as you know, for something like that, you'd have to contact,
But just for this group, the reason to do engineered beaches is that then if a major storm comes and just grabs all the sand, and it becomes a disaster declared storm, we can then go and request FEMA reimbursement funds to actually replenish that beach to the same grade that it was before. So there's,
Just, if I might interject, in Milford, we have one of those, and we have to go out twice a year,
twice a year?
and go and topo it, and we try to go and schedule it so that we can get a lunar low tide, so we can get as far as we can into the water. But to get that during a work day, during the work week,
It's tough.
with
a lunar tide.
With the lunar tide, with no onshore,
Wind or-
phrase with wave action, it makes it very difficult to even get it done twice a year.
And it has to be twice a year, not once a year?
According to the, Army Corps agreement that was done for this beach, it's gotta be done twice a year.
Ooh. All right, so I guess we have to weigh
So there
the
is-
advantages versus disadvantages of
Yeah.
that.
All those elements only come into place when the asteroid's about to hit us.
Yeah, something like that.
Just wanna make sure.
Yeah, I'd have to check on that. As far as I know, our beaches.
Was once a
did not
year?
deal with the Army Corps of Engineers,
Ours was
but,
just deep?
it was just deep. But, like Greg said, that might be a specific one, or that might be the next layer if we ever got past DEP.
They do have, I'm gonna call them drone boats that have sounders on them. They could be used, but the trouble is they cost about $10,000.
Maybe we
And then
share
you gotta
one across all
train
these,
somebody to-
maybe we share it across all these towns
That would
though.
not be a bad idea if it could be put together.
Yeah.
The trouble is you got something that moves, you use it today, you put it on the shelf for 6 months, go to try to use it again and hope it works.
Yeah.
There's some issue, and you do wonder, as you know, FEMA.
And what's the value, and what's FEMA,
Sometimes
is FEMA still gonna be
hard to-
here in 1 year?
Hard to get, as a matter of fact, we still have some outstanding. I think we're finally getting to the end of it, but from Sandy, funding. For Fairfield Beach, Club and, Penfield, I did not, and I just left it the way it was.
We had to give that money up, didn't we? Didn't that fund get?
That's what I mean, I have to.
Well, actually, I
check
think
the
that
capital.
fund stayed. It was the other funds, the Ash
Yeah,
Creek
I-
ones that went towards this plan.
I've been removed from that portion, so I didn't want to update, but I could ask for an update on that. Same thing with the Penfield Beach, same things. Reef Road, that one.
Well, I can give a quick, the Penfield Beach Resiliency, we did the $100,000, we did part of the $100,000 study that was approved by Brenda. And we spent, I think it was 78,000 or 80,000 roughly to do the modeling and to do the sketches, but that project doesn't hold until the NOV is satisfied.
Right.
So that's
That
kind
was
of,
the
that's
race
kind of,
model.
that was the race modeling,
Okay.
yeah. So that's right now
Thanks,
on
I'll
hold.
update that. As I said, some of these I didn't. Reef Road to the treatment plant hardening, again, I put that on a status, I'll have to find out information on that. What I could tell you about Reef Road is, we have a consultant working on the culvert. Originally, we thought it was just gonna be a culvert replacement, but it's the whole head wall, it's the whole structure, both the head walls, all the pipes that connect to it.
And this is the culvert that would feed the marsh between Reef and Road, right?
That's right, yeah.
So this is, the culvert goes underneath the Reef Road and about partway up, and it would feed and replenish that marsh.
Yeah, right.
Have it be
Right now, the existing culvert, which I think is kind of squashed, some of the things say 24 inch, some say it's an oval pipe, equivalent of 24 inch, but there's a gas line on top and a water line on the bottom. So, we're gonna do, but I know conservation is trying to get more tidal flow to the back. Gotta be a little leery of that, but in the same token, we can control the elevations with the tide gate at the fire training center. For that.
So is that funded, that culvert? I know Tim was looking for grants.
Right now, the culvert design is.
Okay, design
Not the
funded.
construction. So culvert design is funded. South Pine Creek, self-regulated tide gate, that construction's in progress. That's the one where there's, I believe there's 3 self-regulating tide gates and 2 sluice gates. That's where.
This is where the railroad bridge is.
Yeah, and the railroad bridge, right, the old railroad bridge. So that one's going on, it's construction in progress. Pine Creek Dike, I just left that one alone.
We're not doing anything right now with that at all.
And the berm, the tie-in, the hardening to the landfill, that was again, one of those,
That will be evaluated as part of the new project,
right.
As part of what project?
the new master plan project.
Sorry, what's WWTP?
Wastewater treatment.
Wastewater treatment plant. Some people go sewage treatment plant, you know. Fairfield Peninsula, that status still stays the same. Right now, we don't have the labor force to do that. If we were going to try to raise Fairfield Beach Road, still potentially could be a good idea, but our preliminary, like the last week before Laura Cooley had retired, she and I went and we estimated you can raise the road 8 inches in a lot of places, maybe 1.5 feet, but that's all you can get.
And that was between humps 2 and 3, or 3.
That was, and then there were a couple of other spots you could try to raise as well. So, you know, if you could raise it 3 or 4 feet and get a huge benefit and everybody on board, that would work.
Yeah.
We've had some trouble even with the 8-inch.
Well, Greg had brought us the Milford road design thing, which I thought was interesting, where you can actually, it was what, 1.5 foot higher?
Our requirement is, and it reads for the entire town, but we only apply it in the beach area, low-lying beach areas, is the garage floor has to be a minimum of 18 inches above the centerline grade of the road, so that at some time, once everybody's elevated enough, we can raise the road 1 foot to reduce the problem.
Yeah.
Because as it is right now, a lot of places we can't do what we need to do because we would go and introduce road water into people's garages.
Right,
And
which I think makes sense.
most of them wouldn't appreciate that.
And we'd have to do a zoning ordinance to do that,
I
right?
was gonna just say zoning, because now you're filling in a floodplain to get that 18
Right,
inches.
but they're doing it in Milford.
I know, I just got.
That's saying.
Every town is different.
Yeah, no, but you're right, we have to check with zoning and see, but if it was something that.
And Emmeline came from Milford, so she should be
Yeah.
aware of that, so, anyway, but I think that's something to
And
follow.
again, from an emergency access standpoint,
It makes sense
sometimes,
to have the ability to.
you know, or if you fill here, can you excavate somewhere else to try to even it out? Other options. Rebuild self-regulating tie gates. The good news on that is the Riverside and, it's Riverside, I won't see, the other one's not even listed on here, I'm sorry. It's Riverside and McLeavy tie.
McLeavy, yeah.
Yeah, those 2 are currently in design. So, yeah.
Oh, good. And they were funded in the capital plan.
Yeah, Riverside and McLeavy tie gates. South Benson Marina, and this, I'll have to check on the status of that one. That might be for 2027. We have the inventory that we have to check on that. The Salt Meadow Dike, Conservation is actually studying to see repair versus the need. There's a possibility that they may remove the tide gates there and let the water go through as just a standard culvert.
And that's the one that goes into the upper marsh, sort of?
Yeah, right, and then that has access, because then that's part of the Frank Bryce walking trail.
Right.
And again, the reason being there is with the 3 or now potentially 5 tide gates at the Kiwanis, the South Pine Creek one's totally necessary, so they're looking into that.
So that could push more water up into that, and you
Again, during dry flows or something like that, yeah. I have to admit though, there is a little caution of if you flood the upper marsh, that's where our some of the downtown drainage flows. So we have a little battle going on.
You can't put too much water in there.
Trying to get rid of downtown flooding versus
Yeah.
trying to restore tidal marshes, so. That's why I have it as we're studying repair versus the need for that one. The underpasses, there's a Circa report on that, and, whether we could seek a grant if they have something come up. And it might even be phasing, I mean, just even having gates or some salesmen had come in where you could possibly put floats, and then there'd be a blinking sign, road flooded or something like that. We're gonna look at a couple of different alternates.
Yeah.
And as you know, I believe it was this past summer, there were 2 people that got stuck in the Roundhill Road underpass. And, by the time the storm ended, you could barely see the top of the cars.
Yeah. Now, I had seen in the capital plan, the railroad bridge, cost, was, at least as a holding place. It was put in under DPW. So I think that's in the capital plan. I don't know if it was final or.
I think it's probably just a placeholder for now.
Yeah.
Because again, they replaced the underpass when they were looking at the North Benson one. That was like 26 million, I mean.
Oh, that was a big one,
you know.
yeah. They didn't put that anywhere near that money.
Right.
That was
So
not
complete
the
replacement.
dollars in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Storm system drainage improvements, we have we have 3 or 4 neighborhoods listed for 2025. I had Henderson, Lawrence, Chelsea, Somerset, Merton as the groups that are kind of ahead of the line, but then we have others listed. And I have to see if it's this year or next year. I don't have much more time, but I might have to do some 14 points to gather more storm systems to tackle. What stinks on that is our DPW can do them significantly less and cheaper, but obviously that takes a lot of time and takes them from doing other jobs. And if you put something out to bid, bids right now are still not favorable. Again, hammering through those that almost everyone's above the estimates, and it's very frustrating. That might change in a year or so, but right now they're very high. Let's see, just updated that the repair the tie gate at Harbor Road at Westway, that was repaired during the Perry Green project. The Ash Creek sand spit, that minor beach replenishment and those plantings. The plantings, I think they had a pretty good success ratio.
Most of them are still there.
Yeah.
They put some fencing up. I think Ash Creek paid for that, but
Well, yeah, we shared it with Ash Creek in the town.
Yeah.
Costs.
Yeah, I think most of them stayed throughout the winter storm.
Yeah, I think I want to, off the top of my head, say 50 to 70% overall, which isn't really bad, considering the conditions, and there's nothing really protecting them there.
And just quickly on Ash Creek, they have a $600,000 grant that is being led by Save the Sound to relook at thin layer deposition, or basically looking at getting the Great Marsh Island and as well as the sand spit to be less erosion prone. They may be looking at some kind of wave attenuation things as well, I don't know. But that's just kicking off. It kicked off about 2 months ago, and they are looking at an additional $400,000 to complete that project as well. So that's ongoing. And that's being run by Save the Sound. And We own a
I
quarter.
remember briefly reading it, but I forgot about it. Thank you. I'll put that on. Rooster River Stormwater Detention, we're getting very close. We were told at the end of February, we'll have the final Army engineer, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers comments, and then we should hold another public meeting before we go out to bid on that. The reason why I bring that one up is the 150 Villa Avenue project met with some opposition, so the town's going to revisit that one.
And that is gonna be bonded, because obviously the ARPA funds ran out.
That's right,
So
yeah.
that,
Which one's 150 Villa Avenue?
Well, that one, we just grouped it all together.
Okay.
Next time I'll separate them.
Okay.
Yeah. Separate them. Downtown green infrastructure, upon all the studies, doing green infrastructure, although it could help, it's never gonna even come close to solving the flooding problem there. So the town hired a consultant called SLR. They're designing plans, trying to get them shovel ready so that if there's any grants that come up that they want quick timeline in 25 or 2026.
we're ready.
You know, we're ready. Again, it's gonna take a year to get permits along, I'm sure.
And is that the 8 to 9 million additional work that they were proposing, or?
Yeah, the figure's probably up to 15 or 20
Oh, it's up to
million
15
now.
now. Oh,
because
God.
as we go to put the new line in, we have to move the sanitary sewer lines, so there's like 8 utility lines in the street, Sherman Street,
Oh, gosh.
and a section of Ruane Street. And ours has to be gravity flow, you know. Some of theirs doesn't have to be, so we could try to work with them, but a lot of times grants and stuff like that won't cover the private utility costs. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Terry's Green bulkhead, as mentioned before, that one's like 99% complete. Only restoration and irrigation are the only punch items left. And then lastly, I have here the master plan. It replaced the high-intensity wave study. And I left a lot of these components in because, as you know, it's a work in progress for the master plan. And we just met or had our kickoff meeting with the consultant. And we'll have a lot more details, and I guess finalize the scope and give us some more information. Do you want to add anything?
There'll be, so we agreed in that kickoff meeting to have a work session roughly 6 weeks later. It hasn't been scheduled yet, but let's assume that's going to be sort of, the kickoff was February 7th, so figure the third week in March, maybe. You know, I think she's got to check schedules, but assume roughly third week in March timing, plus or minus. And that would be a work session. That would be probably a little longer than the kickoff, because I think that in there we would go through, they're right now reading all of the documentation that we sent them, all the prior studies, and then we would pretty much go through all those in this work session and talk about positives, negatives.
And some of them, the links, you know, it work,
they had some trouble with the
There's a
links.
couple other ones where I think we're allowed to send out, and forgive me, I don't even know the exact, but I'll say 20 megabyte drawings, and if they're more than that, then they won't go, so then we gotta create a Dropbox and a folder and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we're still getting them the data.
And that third week will be well after we have the 2 public information sessions too.
Correct. Yeah, so all of us would be eligible to come to that work session once they schedule it. So as soon as we have the date, we'll send it out to everybody. And that's going to be a longer work session, as I said, because we're really going to roll up our sleeves and go through stuff. Bill, awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome to stay for the rest, but I know you.
I see this presentation by Keith, I might just.
Do you want to stay?
I'll stay for a couple minutes.
Nice.
How it starts.
We've had some fun with this thing before, so it's good.
Well, let's do one thing really quickly. Let's just get, go back to item 1 and get the minutes out of the way. Did anyone have any comments on last month's minutes? I did have a couple. I had a couple.
Oh, my goodness.
You're not good.
So, I'll go first. Item 4, let's see. What did I say? I said, David Murphy would do the presentation. Oh, okay, so on the end of, on the second to last paragraph of that, you said David Murphy would run projects, one daytime and one after work. He's not running projects, he's gonna do, the presentations.
Oh, but at those times?
Yeah, for the two public meetings.
Okay, thank you.
And then I had, on item 5, right now, on this first paragraph, right now the discount is 10% for the CRS. I would just put a period, and while I'd like to get us to 15, we have no actual plans to get us to 15, so I would just take off.
I'm sorry, what part is that?
This is item 5, allows for residents in the flood area to receive a discount on their flood insurance through FEMA.
Okay.
Right now, the discount is 10%. I would just end it there and take off, but would like to get to 15.
Okay.
And then item 6, rather than saying at some point the peninsula the road will need to be raised, just say we're exploring the option of raising the road on the peninsula.
Okay.
It's not that it needs to be. I mean, we'd like it to be, those that live on the peninsula, but that may not make sense from a total funding standpoint. It may not make the cut.
Okay.
Those were my comments. Who else had comments?
I do.
Okay, next.
Number 2, second page, the second to last bullet point. I think the word "or" should be deleted. You see where I am?
Or stockpile sand?
Yeah, it's not an "or," it's an "and" in fact,
Yeah,
right? Am I correct?
yeah.
Okay, Pooh?
Yeah, thank you.
Second one on number 3, second bullet point, South Pine Creek residents to dredge creek. Grant funding could be available to them is how it reads now. Isn't it South Pine Creek residents want to dredge the creek and will attempt to raise the funds to do so?
Yeah.
But my notes show that the town's not willing.
The town is not going to be funding that.
Right,
So that would be funded by residents.
right, so I would say insert the word "want" after residents and after the word "creek" and will attempt to raise the funds to do so. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, in number 4, the last paragraph, Carolyn Camlett volunteered to do the public meetings with David Murphy. I think it's Camlett volunteered to schedule the public meetings. And that's it.
There are other edits.
You just gotta remove me from the members present, and also swap out my name with John's name for, the seconding of that motion in number 1.
Right, okay.
Okay?
I want to make it absolutely critical. Number 3, I think the word is supposed to be "for them" instead of "or them." But, hey, listen, I don't know, I didn't want to.
I said to them, actually, I had 2.
Oh, to them.
But it could be 4.
Even better. Always want to see if I can make a contribution.
Any other comments? Then do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. Whatever.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So moved. All right, so let's skip over then to review the FERB feedback on the Penfield Pavilion Resiliency Note and Rooster River flooding, which is 1 and 2. And just skip down to 6 if we can, just to review the upcoming public meetings, because that'll be quick, and then we're gonna have Keith do his presentation. So the 2 public meetings are at the Fire Training Center, 2 days from now on February 20th at 7 p.m. We're going to kick it off with Bill Gerber, who will do a brief introduction to why we're doing this, and then David Murphy has prepared a presentation to talk about, a little bit about sort of, here's all the kinds of things we've done before, here's why we're doing this, and here's what we want to get out of this at the end. And then we will have a question and answer, and we'll have sticky notes for everyone who comes to, if they have ideas they want us to look at as part of this, we want them to write them down and also say them in the meeting out loud so that everyone can hear them. And we'll capture all those sticky notes, and we'll give those then to our consultants, Weston and Sampson, and they will look at those and evaluate the ideas as part of the project. So that's the flow of what the meeting will be. We will do virtually an identical meeting on March 1 up at the Fairfield Woods Library at 1 o'clock, in which case, those that couldn't make it to the first meeting, and we will do Zooms for both meetings. Hopefully the Zooms will work. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. So that way people who are not able to come in person would be able to at least attend via Zoom. Any questions?
I've seen some notes coming through from various people in town.
We had given them our FERB email so that people can actually write, if they can't come, they can write a comment. So we're collecting all those comments as well.
Okay, then they'll be addressed in that meeting.
Well, we're not going to be able to address all the comments in the meeting. What we're doing more is collecting them. If we can address them, we certainly will.
Okay.
But some of these will have to be evaluated.
And I'm not sure if they were all, the one I saw, just somebody listened to our meeting and had comments. So as all that stuff get kind of filtered, number one, did they get replied to? And
I usually try to reply to all of them if I have something, and if I don't, I'll just say, let me get back to you on that.
Okay.
But we actually get an auto reply, which says that your comment has gone to the full FERB board, we are evaluating it and considering it, and someone will be contacting you.
The new messages are off of a link on the new website, is that right?
Yeah, so the new website basically has a place for people to submit their comments, and it goes to all of us. So you're all getting...
Yes.
Whoever comments, we're all getting it.
Yeah.
Right now, I've been the one to do the replying, just because someone has to do that. And mostly I've said, thank you for your comments, we'll be evaluating this, because sometimes it's, like one woman said, my husband's car got ruined in the underpass.
Right.
Yes, we'll be exploring underpass flooding.
Yeah, and others are probably quite lengthy too, though, so I just want to know whether we reply to those or when we're going through the issues.
The only one I haven't replied to is Rick Rauer sent a very long one.
Yeah.
And I have not replied to him yet, because it was so long that I just had to think about how I want to share.
It was so offensive, I don't think there should be a response.
I'm going to give a response to him, but he had a lot of misstatements in it, so I just need to figure out how to best reply.
I think offensive is a better choice.
Well, all right, so anything else on public meetings that anyone has questions? Hopefully you'll all be able to come to one, at least one of them, so you can hear what's being said. You're welcome to come to both as well, but you don't have to, but we would welcome, you at least coming. I would hope you would all come to one so you can hear some of the comments. So let us move on then to item 7, which is other business. We do have a couple other businesses, but I'm going to start with Keith just so that you can share your presentation.
So I was asked to the last meeting to talk about, there was one of the pieces that we'll see here, about impermanent or solutions that may be there for problems of flood mitigation.
Temporary structures.
Temporary structures, better put. I put MD and FACP for 2 reasons. One, I'm just a doctor, right? I'm not an engineer, and I'm not pretending to be, but these are just ideas, right? That have come over the time that we've been in a flood zone in the Rusin River, and how that might be helpful. And FACP, I'm an emergency doctor. We are always faced with emergencies like this, would be in a flood situation. And I believe, and in emergency medicine, we believe that Murphy's Law is always operative. And then the corollary to that Murphy was an optimist, is part of that. And I think that's why we have to look for solutions that may be, and what I'm going to talk about is not an either or. It's not what the solutions, permanent solutions that are going to be really helpful now, but what are we going to do in the interim to be able to address this problem in a way that may be helpful.
And can I give a little context there? Because, Bill can be the first one to say that, you know, even though we approve a project as a town, it could be many, many years before we get the final permit, design drawings, permits done, and even then, you know, bidding it out, implementation. I mean, it could, even though we're doing this massive project, it could be 3 to 4 years before we actually get prioritized projects coming out of this. So what if there's a huge storm between, in these 3 years? Would it make sense to consider, if the cost makes sense, some sort of temporary structure, which is why Keith is.
We're gonna talk a little bit about that, I think. So when we do clinical research, the way meetings happen with that, and I'm gonna offer the indulgence from you all tonight, that, it goes like this: you hear the presentation all the way through, right? If you have questions, you write them down. Unless there's something that needs to be clarified, as a word is not known, for example. You write them all down, then start off the discussion with every reason why this is gonna work, right? Here's all the positives first. Here's the things that can be done to make it better. When that's done, then we go to all the things that have been sitting on your mind going, that can't work because obviously that, right? And then we try to address those things. You can't put all of that into this, and you can't follow through the flow unless we try that. So I'm gonna have to ask for that indulgence. So I'm gonna talk about coast, and we're gonna talk about that as hurricane. We're gonna talk about river, we're gonna talk about that as rainstorm. That's simplifying it, obviously. So there's some shared problems, but these are occasional problems. We know they're gonna be more frequent. That 100-year storm that people talk about, right? It's coming every couple of 3 years, maybe 5 years, right? They're gonna be more intense. We know that because of global climate disruption. And I'm gonna offer there's gonna be a whole lot less recovery resources that are gonna happen down the road. First off, you look at what happened in California right now, right? Look what the insurance companies are saying out there. And look at what FEMA is doing or not doing. And what do we think FEMA is going to do or not do in our future? And what that does is I think that puts more value towards mitigation and prevention without the idea that we can wait for recovery. So hurricane, lead time, you're talking about days, right? The 38 storm that came and nobody knew was coming, that doesn't happen anymore. We have good weather forecasting for those kinds of things. The duration's about a day, right? You have a day build up, hours to a day that's going to happen. Issues are wind and waves being the volume times pulsing pressures, right? So it's a bang, 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 but there's a period of time in between that happens for pulsing pressure. Geographically, it's a broad front that happens, right? But it's not deep into the town, right? It's not back into, unless you have a 38 storm, where, you know, cat something 2, 3, that's gonna go way inland. But basically, it's something that happens on the shore. And the collateral damage that happens is regional. It doesn't just happen to Fairfield. It's something that's gonna come all the way up the coast, right? It's gonna come all the way up the East Coast, and so it's not an isolated problem. In contrast, rainstorms, your lead time is hours, or as Bill points out, the first one we had that was really bad, they had like 20 minutes, right? This was a pop-up storm. It just happened really fast, right? So it's a very short lead times. Durations maybe an hour. Right? It doesn't last very long. So the damage happens very quickly. So the issue really is not a pulsating problem, right? You're not getting waves that happen as with this. This is a volume over time. God forgive me, this is really calculus, right? Ooh. I think there are two things to think about. One is what I call torrent points, right? Where does the water come from? Where does it build and where does it impact? And that's ingress. So it's a time when you have a great increase in ingress of water over a short period of time. And then there are choke points. There are points where the water can't get out. It can't get through fast enough. So those two are competing with each other all the time. And as you have increasing ingress and decreasing egress, that's when you have the problem of flooding. Geographical impact, though, is narrow and it's deep, right? So we're talking about the Rooster River, and I apologize, but the other river, right, the Mill River?
Mill River.
But the Rooster River is a big one that floods, right? But that's a narrow, but it's deep. It goes all the way back up into Easton and Trumbull, right? So it's deep throughout our town. But the collateral damage is local, right? It's a local problem. It's not all the way up and down the East Coast, right? It's gonna be, relatively speaking, a local problem that we're gonna have to deal with, because I think the external resources for it are not gonna be there in the future. Uh-oh, I
You
didn't
went
go
the
the
wrong
wrong
way.
way. Yeah, oops. Yep, sorry, my bad. I'm gonna offer that for an occasional problem, you want an impermanent solution. The permanent solutions are gonna be expensive, and they're gonna be tough to get through regulations. And maybe these might be easier. The common to both of those are, the common criteria that I think we should look at are, what's temporary, what can you put up and take down quickly and easily, tested previously by other places, and is it testable in our situation? No and minimum requirements of regulatory approvals, I'm leaving that to other people, because that's really way out of my purview. Timely, can we, is this something we can get now versus something that's gonna be here 2, 3, 5, forever years in the future? What's its cost? And then there's the cost of failure. In emergency medicine, right, the cost of failure is always kind of looked at. If it costs, well, you make a mistake and it costs another couple of hours in the emergency department, that's bad. You make it cost and it kills them, that's real bad, right? So we have to consider that we're only gonna get to test this occasionally, right? We can't run the real test to know. But if it costs a little bit, relatively, if it fails versus you spending millions and millions of dollars and it fails, those are two different sets of costs of failure. Hurricane goals, and I'm gonna do this quick because you know way more about this than I do, and I just thought a little bit about this. What are the goals? You wanna keep the water in the sound, right? You don't want it to come into town. And particularly, you don't want salt water into town structures, both common structures, town hall, the fire training station, and economic structures, the train tracks, the electrical. And you want to keep it out of our personal structures. Large barriers deployed over hours. They're European models. I mean, the Netherlands have been doing this for 1,000,000 years, 100 years. We have sunny day flooding, right? That happens. Plenty of ways to practice on. If you want a temporary structure and you want to find a place to find out whether it works or not, you bring it to where the waves are, and you test it. Need regulatory approvals, beyond my pay grade. It's available now, right? You can get this now. Cost of this versus permanent structure costs, you folks have looked at, and a relatively low cost of failure. You've already looked at and this was in one of from the Penfield Pavilion piece back on the 29th. You've looked at these kinds of things, right? You put it up, you take it down. Those are something that you folks know a lot about. I'm going to talk now about the rainstorm. So what I'm going to talk particularly about today is about slow water movement down the rivers, right? This is, the water's going someplace. All we can do is slow it down so that as we decrease ingress, we have a hopefully better egress, but the egress gets to catch up with things, right? So it doesn't flood. We want to keep the water in the rivers. We want to keep the water, again, out of the town economic and common structures and keep it out of our personal spaces. So one of the things that I've looked at is what I call L-shaped barriers that are deployable in minutes. So this needs to be a little bigger, I think. Tell me I'm going to screw this up.
Go to your right and hit the square. No, to your right.
My military right?
Right there.
To make it big all the way.
Yeah, the whole thing, it'll maximize this screen. Is that better?
Right, so this is a particular company. I am not wedded to this company. I have no financial interest in this company. I couldn't care less. We find one that's better, outstanding. But this is the concept, right? So they're called box walls. flood barriers. What happens is as you increase the amount of water, it pushes down on this, right? So it forms a ballast. And it makes it so that it is.
You put it around the hospital in Tampa.
Exactly.
Yeah, I saw them putting it up.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? Well, so Tampa can be added to this. I'll have to get pictures of that. So that's the basic concept, is these LPs. They come in two sizes. This comes in two sizes. So there's the daddy and the kitty, right? 20 inches, 3 feet by, 20 inches by 3 feet and 40 inches by 4 feet. They're relatively light. This is the big one. This is the 40-inch one, and that is how many pounds? 34 pounds. You can move those. The smaller one, the 20-inch one, is 13 pounds. The small one is the equivalent of when you have set up across an area is the equivalent of 144 40-pound sandbags. And they can be stacked into small areas, right? So you're not losing a lot of area in order to store them, and they work. They really do. This was and done in various places. This was a demonstration was done in Australia, right? Where they're using them in Australia. Municipals in other countries. Well, in Europe, they've been using these for a long time. This particular company, I believe, is Swedish. But in the Netherlands and Germany, they've been using these for a long time. You can see the amount of water we're talking about. Click. Flood defense group, that's what it is. There's one of these guys. Sounds a little bit like the Wilson River. Now, they did this in a way that's not the way that people used it. They had to use this because it was an irregular surface at the bottom. So they basically diverted the river.
Yeah.
Made it down to go that new town. This is extra, so I'm gonna hold off on doing that. I mean, this is all how they particularly did it in this instance. So, you know, when one of the questions that was asked was, is it effective and it can be done with large volumes of water? And they kind of show that it did. So what do we got for, if we want to practice this? Sure, fire department can practice it. And you want to see about ease of putting it up and quickness of putting it up. Kind of looks like my backyard during the floods at the River. And I don't know, but that's a pretty good flow of water. You got one guy, this guy, right? the guy doesn't look like he's hustling a whole lot, right? Not like he's really making time records. Already you can see the amount of water that was going distal to this has markedly decreased, and they're not even put together yet. Now this is basically dry behind it. So what we're talking about is not, the water has to go someplace. We want to put it where we would like it to go rather than in people's houses, and rather than going down the Rooster River, overflowing that, and going into economic and common space. I'm going to beg your indulgence to show, because 3 minutes and 30 seconds to put that up.
You know, Keith, there was one thing that you mentioned that was really critical, and that's, this is diverting the water, taking the water where you want to.
Exactly.
If we could,
Doesn't hold back.
Doesn't hold.
but if we could get it to Owen Fish, in other words,
that
not
was
let
one
it.
Keith and I have talked about it with David Becker as
Yeah.
well. Still looking into it, but again, you're just diverting the water.
Yeah.
So the water,
Exactly.
if you want to, if you want to protect a particular location and that other, where that water deflecting can go.
You just need to make sure that it doesn't deflect,
If you
deflect
deflect it and it
someone
just
else's house.
wraps around,
Yeah,
and that's,
yeah.
so, it needs a little bit more
Wait,
further investigation.
yeah.
But there's
Absolutely.
definitely some key points, and somebody mentioned maybe, to protect the hospital, something.
You get it today, right? You can order this today, relatively low cost. I'm gonna show you so this is what it would look like, right? This is my house. These are manhole covers, and you'll see why that's important for a minute or two. Here's Churchill, Big Hill coming down, SHU is to the left, and Fairfield Town Center is to the right. This is what happens during the rainstorms, right? Water comes in these directions. What's most interesting is for those three manhole covers, they pop. There's so much pressure in those pipes, they pop, and the manhole covers go in the opposite direction. So that this manhole cover goes about 30 feet to the left, where you would expect with flow of water that it would go to the right. So that water is going so much pressure, it's going backward. And that's what puts the vast amount of water into this section, which really is what increases the water going down down into town and down into the river. You got, some of it goes to Owen Fish already. If you have if we were to have those 60 feet here and 60 feet here, we've already built a wall, so that's taken out from our house. We don't get any benefit if those were to be there. what would happen would be, right, what we would be looking at, what has been looked at for a detention, zone, Owen Fish Park, would get the vast majority of this water, and we would decrease the, flow down towards the, bottom of the Rooster River. So what's the cost? Well, if you use the 20-inch size, about $8,000 for that, just that project, right, 120 feet. And about $16,000 for 40 feet, for the bigger ones, right? Assume there are 10 torrent points. I don't know how many there are, because we still have to see that. Assume there are 10. And you did it with the 20, you did it with the 20-inch, it's 80,000, it would be $80,000. For 40, it would be 160, and we got $3.2 million that were appropriated through ARPA, which would be about, keep doing that, which would be about 2.5% for the 80,000 and 5% for the, and you could do it tomorrow. So if the storm came tomorrow, we're not waiting for the detention 75 years down from that. Lower cost of failure. Hey, if the detention centers, if the detention ponds fail, that's millions of dollars. These fail, it's 80,000, 160,000. Not jump change, but it's a lot less. And I would offer that it is not either or. We should be still doing the detention. We've got to do something now. Try something that may have a high chance of success. And it's a low cost of failure. So what could you do? Make these, we buy some of these. You could do, I'm gonna offer those pricing, that's retail. I'm gonna offer that if you're doing this with bulk buying from the town, that could be even less. And that you could do that for personally, if the town bought, hundreds of these, with under subscription, that you could really lower the price so that even individuals could put these and buy these at much less than the retail price. And we can use these for other things, right? It doesn't matter what they're there, ready to be deployed for other things like coastal day flooding, supplemental to the berms, for example, if we knew it was a hurricane that was coming.
The other one's called aqua fence. Those are 6 foot high, same theory, and they put them around Tampa Bay Hospital.
Yeah.
And then a hurricane hit that, filled it up with water, dry behind it.
I think has some potential. Thank you for listening to this. Hopefully it was interesting.
Well done.
There's a company, floodproofing.com, that's very, very active. They provide training for floodplain managers. They have free design services, and they have, like I say, a couple dozen different products in their bag of tricks. They've got a couple things similar to this. They've got some that are fabric and fold down and have a tether. They have things that look like the attenuated plastic traffic barrels that you can go and you can deploy those all the way up to permanent and semi-permanent flood logs, flood planks. You showed earlier the flood tubes, and there's no one size fits all, one product for every application. It has to be looked at differently. You also have to figure, it's not just the cost of purchasing. You got to store them someplace where they're easily deployable. You have to have a vehicle so that you can get them from where they're stored to where they're going to go. You have to have trained personnel to put them in place.
So let's go.
I'm not being a Debbie Downer or anything. I'm just laying it. And these are all resolvable.
Yeah. So for example, storage. Yeah. There's already storing at Owen Fish Park.
Yeah.
Transportation is a pickup truck.
Yeah.
Deployment is 2 people, and it's really minimal training. You can, so, there are answers
Just
to
some of
those.
the things, I was looking at the way it was being deployed, if an OSHA inspector was around, they'd be having a coronary.
There are gonna be all those kinds of particular pieces that are gonna be there. If it's the option.
And I'm not detracting from
Sure.
the product.
No, I'm not advocating this product.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there are, and you make a great point, and it's gonna be the engineers that are gonna come up with what's the right product. But just, that they're there.
Hopefully the OSHA guy helps put them out before you have the car.
Yeah. No, then I get to take care of it. It's good. The piece to that is, in a way, it's, if I have the option to do something to prevent water from being 4 feet in my basement.
Oh, yeah.
I'm also at risk, that flooding that I showed you there, that was up to my knees, and I'm 6'7". Right, that came out of that pipe. So that's where the floodwaters are coming from.
Yeah.
And if we can make that stay, and all we have to do is keep it around for about 20 minutes. Putting it into Owen Fish Park for 20 minutes would be a real major difference. And there's gonna be plenty of those, right? There's gonna be up by the Trumbull Mall, there's gonna be, there'll be a whole bunch of sites.
Under the overpasses.
So what are we looking to do in this meeting relative to this?
I don't know, they asked me to come up with.
Outcome for this? I'm just curious what this is leading to.
Educational process, correct?
Please.
So the reason, so I stepped out for a second, so apologies, I'm not sure what the question was.
What do we want to do about this?
A great presentation.
The reason that we were doing this is he had done all this planning. He had presented this to the town. I wanted this board to be aware of it. The next steps are not necessarily to use this, although that may very well be the solution. We are going to be asking our consultants to look at a combination of permanent structures for mitigation as well as temporary. So I wanted you guys to be aware of the work he'd done, that the town had discussed it, that there were some discussions. I think we need to share these same things with our consultants in the planning meeting. So I'm going to ask you to actually bring probably a condensed version of this, because we maybe a slightly shorter.
Come on, you love the video.
And share that with Weston and Sampson. The other thing I will tell you is I reached out to Jim O'Donnell and John Krasinski at Circa, and
What's Circa?
Circa is the Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation. It is it's driven out of Yukon, and it's basically the state group that is looking at resilience across Connecticut, working with DEEP and stuff like that. So they have done a lot of projects across the state. They have something called Resilient Connecticut. They actually are funded, and they can actually do specific projects. I said, hey, is there any funding to do a deep dive on temporary structures, and would you be willing to work with our consultants to do that? And they're going to look into it, and they may or may not have any funding, but we'll see. So that may be another resource for us.
Cool.
So I don't think there's any action from today's meeting, although I think, Keith wanted to give you a chance to ask any questions, but I think the only action for today was just to expose you to it, to share the work that he's done, that he had presented to the town before, so that we're all aware that it was done, and then I'm going to ask him to do as I said, a shorter version for the work session.
The only thing I'm going to say is that the first one of these big storms was what, 2017, 18?
2018 was the
2018.
first one, then there was 2021, and then 2023 is slightly...
So now we're 7 years in, and if you're looking at it from the point of view of people in the watershed of the Rooster River, the detention ponds look a long ways away. And to have $3.2 million somewhere available and having nothing, or relatively speaking, nothing that's been done, is something that that's a problem.
And I wasn't aware that it was that inexpensive. I mean, if you're saying a couple $100,000 to be deployed easily.
For the big ones, we're talking $50,000-$60,000.
Yeah, I mean, that
For the big ones, it would be for that one, if you go to
120 feet, yeah.
Yeah, you go to 10 sites, each one of them 120 feet. that would be $162,000.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like something we should look into, is all I'm saying, and I think that should be explored as part of our project. I don't have a lot of experience behind temporary structures, I'll be honest.
I don't either.
I've been doing a lot of reading and stuff, and you know, they are using these kinds of things in lots of other places, successfully. I know that the water-filled ones take a little bit longer to deploy, and sometimes you have to have anchor points, and so it's a little bit more complicated for the coastal.
That may be better for coastal, yeah.
But it's a little more complicated.
You have the difficulty of the surface, that the original video showed, that they had to keep tarping in order to make it work.
But they also have, there are other videos that show about porous surfaces. And what you'd be looking at what we would be looking at least in most of these trigger, corner points, would be flat surfaces.
You'd be doing it on roads.
Yeah,
We don't have
the
roads.
beach would be tubes.
The beach would probably be water-filled too.
Yeah, water-filled tubes,
Fire
me,
hydrants.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had seen a presentation over at Burroughs from Ash Creek, and somebody got a fellow from, UConn, that professor who does all the research on climate resiliency.
Oh, Jim O'Donnell.
Oh, yeah, Tim O'Donnell, right.
Yeah.
Scott, yeah, the English fellow there, Scott.
Yeah, Scottish.
Scottish fella, and, yeah, he was talking about geotubes, or somebody was talking about geotubes, but they said that was a little bit more difficult, you gotta fill them with sand and all like that, but if you fill up a tube with water, if you have a hydrant, they said, the notes there said with a hydrant, they're pretty
Yeah.
efficient to fill them.
Or you bring it down to the water, because you got days of notice, bring it to the water, fill them up, winch them into the position that you want them to be in. Right? You don't even have to use town water.
So I think it behooves us as a significantly cheaper option to explore that as part of this project, so, that's why we're having the presentation. So I don't know if you guys had comments or questions, but I think I'll move us on to the last agenda item if we don't. So thank you for sharing that, thank you for putting that together, very helpful. One other thing on item 7, which is the new business, I wanted to just mention that we have an intern, Misha, you've met Misha, who is working with MetroCog's GIS expert, who is a guy named Mark Hoover, and he is helping us look at a GIS mapping of all of the structures in the coastal floodplain, looking to see which houses are elevated and which are not. And that'll help us understand the relative risk factor of damage, because obviously an elevated house is likely to incur a lot less damage than a non-elevated house when it floods. So that'll help us really understand what are we talking about, because I think in the years since Sandy, easily 100 houses, and you might know more than this, at least 100 houses have been elevated since then, and probably more. There were 600 houses damaged in Sandy, so obviously not all of them have been, but it could be that some are replaced, some are elevated, but there's been a lot of work, creating resiliency on an individual homeowner's dime.
Is there a definition of what's elevated that they're using? Because some houses, mine is not elevated, but it's, I'm still 8 feet up, from the ground.
So the way he's doing the mapping is he's looking at the FEMA elevation levels as the start point. And then if there is one that looks like it's partially elevated, he's putting that as a question mark, which will allow us to then go and do a site inspection to see whether we think that would, at what level would a storm damage that kind of a house. But the FEMA has very specific guidelines, depending on which zone you're in, how high it needs to be elevated in order to count.
He's comparing it to the recent elevation certificates, I'm assuming?
He's not going back and looking at it as certificate by certificate. He's doing more of a eyeball.
Okay.
I told him to count steps, basically. So he may, and I think, again, this is not meant to be an exact analysis, but more of a sense of how many of our homes have some level of protection, at least in the floodplain since Sandy, and what have homeowners done to do that. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. He's doing that right now for us. Let's go back up to the one item that I had skipped over,
Sorry, just 1 second, just to let the people who are on the call here know that 4 minutes left on this, and then it will end.
Oh.
They'll be back on the audio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are they on?
They're on a Google,
Google Meet, so they
Meet,
can see the presentation.
so they could see the slides. So let's go back up to the note that we wrote on the Penfield Pavilion C. We did not get any feedback from the town. We shared, the concern that, you know, we might want to look at, temporary stockpiling sand in the case of a storm. We might want to, we asked them to consider not grading, the sand all the way down to 8 feet, all the way out to the beach. So I'm not sure what they're going to do. They took the fence down today. I don't know if you guys have driven by, but the fencing is down, and I assume, I did not go onto the beach today. I don't know if you did.
I didn't know, but I did see the fence down.
Yeah, so I don't know if they've started the grading. Our request was very specifically, because there's 8 feet underneath the pavilion that goes out about, I'd say 20 to 30 feet. And then right now, there's about at least a foot of higher sand that the fence had accreted. And I asked them to leave that little dune, because I think it offers us some protection, and some protection is better than no protection. I don't know whether they will comply with our request, but I hope they do. I asked them to kind of just slope it down as opposed to bulldozing it all to 8 feet. So I guess we'll see. I was not able to follow up with Eli, whose project it is, because I guess he was on vacation. So do not have an answer on that. But that was our request. The other thing that I'm just going to do as a follow-up, and I'm doing this because Ian's here, is that we had talked about flooding in the parking lots. And my understanding is that the pavement of the paved parking lot was graded slightly down towards the grassy verge, but from what I could see, there was no kind of detention basin at all there. Yeah.
If I may. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They engineered and built a long bioswale with drains and everything at the bottom before the parking lot hits Fairfield Beach Road.
Okay, I'd have to go look at that, because I tried to look and I didn't see anything.
Where all those tall, you know,
the bushes are.
And weed kind of thing, where all the bushes are. If you look in between, you'll see there are actually grates, and it's the bioswale they designed, engineered.
Okay. So that's good, I guess, if that's working. And then I still have a big concern about the dirt parking lots on the other side of the road. And so I talked with a woman today who is a resiliency landscape architect to see what kinds of things we could look at. And I gave your suggestion of going back to grass for parts of it. She's a little nervous that if you drive over grass, you're going to mat it down to the same point and pack it down the way the dirt is packed down now.
They have products that you can fill in with soil, and you can grow grass on it, but it's reinforced, so it's not going to get compacted with cars going over it all the time.
So maybe that would be an option to look at. So I'd like to put that on the list for our consultants to look at, because right now that does flood a lot, and I'd like to see if we can mitigate the flooding in that particular parking lot. And then I did follow up with Jim Wendt on putting trees in the parking lot. And what he said is that if the forestry and committee and the tree warden want to put trees there, he's fine with it, but he is saying that it was not a mandate of the project because there were no trees there before, so he's not going to mandate that. So it's kind of in the forestry committee's remit at this point. I would like to work with your group and find out where we could put trees, because I still believe trees can help flooding, but maybe placement would be, we could negotiate where we can place them.
Very much appreciated. I'm here because of all the phone calls I got from neighbors already.
So I think I know there are some trees that were funded by the Fairfield Beach Residents Association that could be put there. So there's already funding for trees. And these would be smallish trees that would be salt tolerant, obviously.
What were the calls about?
Well, a couple things. First of all, if I may.
No. This is the time to open it up to public comment.
So the parking lot, that dirt parking lot, my house is right next door to it. So I sit in my family room and I look out over that, and I look over the beach every day. So the parking lot doesn't flood, it puddles. And one of the reasons why it puddles is because the ground has changed over the years since all the construction there, because I don't know if did you get the picture I sent you of all the dump trucks there the other day?
No, did you?
I texted there were 7 or 8 tandem dump trucks that come into that lot, and then as soon as, the 6:30 bell rings, they go over across the street into the Penfield lot, and they scoop up stuff and take it out. Well, there's been construction equipment there, and unfortunately, we've tried with the town, with the Parks and Rec, and they're gonna hopefully come up with a solution to this. Kids use that parking lot as a racetrack, and you'll see, come here, if you drive in from Penfield Road, and then you go down towards the other end, you'll see all the heavy marks and the divots where they're doing donuts and all this other stuff. They do it when it's muddy, because they like to do that when it's muddy. So what it used to be, and I've got photos, when you pull into that lot from Penfield Road, it used to be a dirt area. I'm not sure if this is at 20 feet, but it used to be about we called it the raceway. It was about 20 feet wide of dirt that was compacted, which in turn, years later, they put in this egg-shaped, egg carton, plastic, you know what I'm
Yeah, I don't know the name, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Filled it with dirt to absorb, with stones, to absorb the water. And that worked really well. Outside of this dirt area that went all the way around, and it looked like a racetrack, was grass. And most of the weeds, right, which are good because the weeds held up better, but the cars coming in and out of that parking lot pretty much stayed on the dirt. They parked on the grass and the weeds, so it didn't get as much damage. And I'm sure the product that you're talking about is even better.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we looked at, we found I think it's called permazyme, so a liquid solution that you could actually put down on the dirt part that would make the dirt part hard, so you wouldn't get the dust that some of the people were complaining about, especially when the kids are going around, I have deck furniture outside, it's got to be washed, 3 times a week because the dust that comes up. But we felt that the permazyme, which makes the dirt hard, but it still looks like dirt, probably isn't that great of a solution because that might exacerbate
the water won't go through, yeah.
Right. So there were a couple of things, back and forth, but clearly it was never as bad, and I've been there since 1988. Never as bad as it's been over the last couple of years, because other than that 15, 20 foot wide loop, it was all greenery, whatever you want to call it. And there were the shrubbery. So the question, why are people complaining? People, myself included, who has a house that was damaged by Hurricane Sandy, and then we had to obviously elevate. So I spent $500,000. I'm one of the least expensive projects, because there's a lot of houses that were built specifically after Sandy, and every architect and every builder that built one of those houses did so with one thing in mind: views of the water. And if you pull our line cards in Town Hall, you'll see that we pay more in taxes the closer we are to the water. So anything that impedes our view just raises the hair on the back of people's necks, and I wind up getting phone calls. So, and I don't blame them. Honestly, I feel the same way. Plantings, fine. There's Rosa rugosa. There's things that are, that are flowery, and they, they're bushes, and they've survived all the hurricanes. That's fine. But to start putting trees down there is going to really rile people up, and it'll be ugly.
Yeah. Well, and again, I'm not wedded to trees. I am wedded to getting rid of the flooding.
Yeah, and again, that lot doesn't flood. It puddles. Yeah. I can tell you what does flood. And by the way, and I mentioned this the other day in a phone call with Becky, I would invite all of you at any point in time, prearranged, to come to my house while it's light out, and sit in my family room, stand out on my deck, and let me show you, because there are a number of misconceptions about where the flooding comes from when we have coastal storms, and where the flooding comes from torrential downpours. It does not come from where a lot of people think it comes from. And even some of the consultants that we've hired over the decades have been incorrect. And maybe because I never invited them to come and actually show them where the water comes from, And, you know, Sandy was a perfect example, Irene was a perfect example, and some of the more recent torrential downpours that we've had, which flooded my yard, but not the parking lot, is an example. It's an open invitation, at any point that you want to schedule it, I'm happy to entertain everybody coming over so I can show you what actually happened.
Hey, just to clarify, there's two lots, so lot, when going down Tennisfield, you're talking about the one on the left or the right?
The one on the right, the bigger one. Yeah. The one on the left, similar problems. I mean, if you take a look down there tomorrow, it's not flooding.
It's just muddy.
It's puddles.
Yeah.
Now, that one does flood a little bit on torrential downpours, because what happens as a result, and by the way, full disclosure, I was on the Tennisfield Building Committee, and if you go back and look at the videos, you'll see that I was the lone person who voted against a lot of the things that were done, because I live there and I know what actually happens, but majority rules. So the parking lot was redesigned, so the parking lot is now on an angle. You don't see it, but it's, I forget whether it was a 30-degree or 40, whatever it was, so that the water would run away from the pavilion and down onto the road. The bioswales caps most of it, but for the area in between the two big bioswales, that's what floods the corner of Fairfield Beach Road and Penfield Road, and if it's a really bad one, sometimes it rolls over into the smaller of the two dirt parking lots.
I've seen that.
Yeah. And I have photos of all that stuff too, that can always blow up.
And those are things we'll discuss with our consultants.
Yeah.
And the consultants are invited to my house too.
I said I would actually bring them to your deck. All right, thank you for sharing that, by the way. So I think I'm looking over the agenda. I'm going to go back to item 7. Does anyone else have any other new business that they would like to bring up? Hearing none, then we're ready to adjourn. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the move.
Can I have a second?
I'll second motion.
So moved. So that is the end of our meeting today. Thank you all for your time today. Thank you all for coming out. And we're closing the meeting at 8, what is it, 22?
25.
Oh, okay.